You know, what if I told you that the modern American government wasn't really born from some grand thought out plan, but was actually forged in the fire of a single, unbelievably chaotic year? Well, that year was 1914. The United States got hit by a perfect storm of crises: a brutal war at home, an invasion abroad, and a global financial meltdown. And get this, it was all happening at the exact same time. Okay, so first I want you to picture this. A vicious war is just raging deep in the nation's heartland. But this isn't a conflict between countries. No, this is between American miners and the massive corporations they worked for. And let me tell you, this struggle was about to hit a horrific, horrific boiling point. And at that very same moment, the US military was literally fighting on two fronts. So while this war was breaking out in Colorado, President Wilson was also commanding an invasion and occupation of a neighboring country, Mexico. And just to pile on, as if that wasn't enough chaos, a third crisis was brewing: a global economic meltdown. The world's entire financial system was just teetering on the brink of total collapse, and it was threatening to bankrupt the entire nation and drag the world economy down with it. It was absolute madness. So how in the world did America face this three-front crisis? Well, they didn't use the old playbook. A radical new philosophy of government was in charge, this whole new way of thinking called progressivism. And its big idea was that in the modern age, a government had to be powerful, active, and willing to jump in. I mean, this was a revolutionary shift. The old idea from the Gilded Age was laissez-faire, which basically means government should just stay out of the way, let big business run the show. But the progressives? They threw that idea right out the window. They argued that in this complex industrial world, the government had a moral duty to step in, to regulate corporations and to protect its people. And that really became its core mission, to use the full power of the federal government as a tool, a weapon almost, against the great evils that came with industrialization. We're talking dangerous factories, corrupt politicians, and the just unchecked power of corporate monopolies. So you can imagine those first two crises, the labor war in Colorado and the invasion of Mexico, they became this sudden, incredibly high-stakes stress test. Could this new activist theory of government actually handle being at war with its own people and a foreign country at the same time? And look, this conflict in Colorado, it didn't come from nowhere. The numbers here, they tell a really brutal story. The death rate in the state's coal mines was more than double the national average. I mean, miners were striking for things that seem so basic to us now, like an 8-hour workday, and just getting paid for the time it took to secure the collapsing roofs over their heads. So, what was the company's response to these basic demands? Private guards, who patrolled the miners' tent camps in an armored car with a machine gun mounted on top. Yeah, this was not a negotiation, it was basically warfare. And that chilling nickname the miners gave it, the Death Special, well, that tells you everything you need to know about how one-sided this fight really was. Okay, the timing here is just staggering. On April 20th, the Colorado National Guard attacked one of those miners' tent cities. They burned it to the ground and killed women and children. It became known as the Ludlow Massacre. The very next day, the U.S. Navy invaded Veracruz, Mexico. So in the span of just 48 hours, President Wilson was commanding two separate wars, one against his own citizens and one against a foreign power. But while Wilson was juggling these two military operations, a third, and you could argue even greater, threat was emerging, one that could bring the entire country to its knees: the complete collapse of the global financial system. As Europe was just plunging into what would become World War I, panicked countries started dumping their American investments so they could pay for their armies. They sold off $3 billion worth of U.S. securities. Now, to put that in perspective, that's nearly $100 billion in today's money. It was a tidal wave of cash flooding out of the country, and it was threatening to drain America's gold reserves and crash the entire market. The response from the Treasury Secretary, a guy named William McDougall, was just stunningly bold. It was pure progressivism in action. He didn't wait around for the market to correct itself. He took control. He ordered the New York Stock Exchange to shut down, not for a day, for 4 months, just to stop the bleeding. He pumped emergency money into the system to stop bank runs, and he defended the gold standard to keep the dollar stable. I mean, this was the government as the ultimate economic firefighter. And you can see this new mindset perfectly when New York City itself was on the verge of going bankrupt. The Treasury stepped in with a bailout. And the justification from Secretary McAdoo? The city was, in his exact words, too big to fail.
That phrase, it feels so modern, right? But it was born right here in 1914. It proved the government now saw itself as the economy's ultimate safety net. So, what was the end result of all these trials by fire? These three massive crises, domestic, foreign, and economic, they didn't break the American system. Not at all. Instead, they forged a totally new one, a stronger, more centralized, and just a vastly more powerful federal government.
And what's really amazing is that while all of this chaos was unfolding, a quiet revolution was happening in American democracy itself. For the very first time ever, the 1914 elections let citizens vote directly for their U.S. senators. That was thanks to the new 17th Amendment. And this was a core progressive goal finally coming true, taking power away from corrupt political insiders and putting it right into the hands of the people.
So, the election results, they were a little mixed. The Republicans gained some serious ground. But, and this is the crucial part, President Wilson's Democrats held on to their majorities. And that was the final verdict, really. The progressive agenda, which had just passed this incredible fiery test, was here to stay. This new, powerful model of government was secure.
So when you boil it all down, the crises of 1914 basically proved the whole progressive idea was right. In just 1 year, the federal government was forced to become all of these things that had never really been before. A military referee in domestic fights, an international enforcer on the world stage, and the financial stabilizer of last resort for the entire economy. A whole new American state had been born. That single chaotic year created the blueprint for the modern American government that we all live with today, a government that's powerful enough to tackle almost any challenge. Which leaves us with a really critical question, right? A question for our time. What new challenges and what new dangers does this powerful government, the one forged in the fires of 1914, present to us now?